Hello, hello, welcome. Thanks for showing up, guys. We are in the Highly Sensitive People Club on Clubhouse, and today I wanted to share a topic that might sound a little woo to some people, but I think in the arena of being a highly sensitive person, this may feel um, pretty natural to you to look at yourself as someone who is deeply sensitive and can connect to a mission on earth that feels guided by your intuition and your need or your instinct to serve and support other people. And so I thought, why not talk a little bit more about the different types of light workers? I was inspired by an article that I read in Medium. And I have to admit that for the longest time, I've considered myself a healer, a light worker, someone who is here to transmute and elevate and bring light into this world and show up on a really deep level. But until I joined Clubhouse just a year ago, I didn't even know there were different types of empaths. And I really just dug my heels into the science and research of being a highly sensitive person. And I felt that I spent so much time in the woo, which was really difficult to be in because a lot of people don't understand it. They don't understand you. And then you couple that with being a highly sensitive person, it can feel really defeating to constantly be misunderstood. And then when I recently came over this article about the different types of light workers, it just gave me this light bulb moment. And I realized that there are different types of empaths and there are different types of light workers. And the theme in those, and also the trait of being a highly sensitive person, is that we have the sensitivity, the depth to hold space for healing and serving other people. And I will reference this article, and I do want to share some of the descriptions about the different types. But before I do that, I just want to read the little excerpt about healers in particular, because to me, I always considered myself a healer. I didn't know how to label that. I didn't have science to back it up. I didn't claim to go around healing people, but the feedback that I get from people is that I bring a very soothing energy to my relationships, which can then feel like a healing experience for others. So that's just feedback that I've gotten before I even knew I was a highly sensitive person. So I'm just going to read this description of one of the types, and this type is the healer. So in the category of light workers, healer shows up as one of these types. And it says, these are the light workers that are templated to help humanity, animals, and the planet heal in one form or another. They are here to help humanity heal from pain and suffering. They come with huge hearts and are very kind, gentle, and compassionate. And their mission is to help people and animals feel better. Most of these healers are empaths and highly sensitive people because it takes someone who can feel the pain of others to heal them. And sometimes being in the presence, being near the energy field of a healing light worker is enough to heal a person. So I really connect with this definition of healers, and I'm sure there's a gazillion different ways to describe a healer. I'm just referencing this article in particular, and I just thought that was such a great part of this description, is that it brings in the word empaths and highly sensitive people. So I really resonated with this. And another part that I learned about this article is that we can be many different types of light workers. It's not that we're only one and we're pigeonholed into that type only, and we can be different types at once. So I think it's just really interesting to talk about the different mission and purpose that different light workers have on this earth. And this article really goes into that. And I can put a link to it, but it is held in Medium. And sometimes you need a subscription to even see the articles. Sometimes it lets you see a few articles before it requires a subscription. So I may get into this as we talk. I'll put that link up. But if the link is not working, that is why. So I'm sharing all of this to kind of preface a conversation where I would love to hear from you. What does the word lightworker mean to you? What does healer mean to you? And do you see yourself as a healer, as a highly sensitive person? Or is this a new idea to you? What does light worker in your mind mean? And are you familiar with the different types? Because this is just one author's viewpoint. She says there's 7 different types, but if you do a quick Google, there'll be people that say there are 12 different types or 10 different types. So obviously there's different categories that we can put light workers in, and that may be different per article, but I'm just going with this one, and it says there are 7 different types of light workers. So I would love to hear from anyone in the audience that would like to come up on stage. If you resonate with the term light worker, if you feel that you're a light worker, are you familiar with the different types of light workers? And if you're not, I'll just go ahead and start to read through some of the descriptions. And maybe as I read the descriptions, you may resonate with these different light worker types. Let's see here. So hand raising is up. I am bringing this up. Or am I saying your name correctly? Is it Candice or Candice?
Hi, it's Candice.
Thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. So your question, you said, you asked, are you aware of light workers, or are you aware of there are the different types of light workers?
Yeah, I mean, if you might have heard of the term light worker, but did you realize there were different types? And do you identify with a specific type of light worker?
Okay, so I feel like I already, before I became spiritual, I did not know what a light worker was. In like 2018, that's when I became aware that I was spiritual. And it wasn't until a few months later I started hearing the term. So I'm not really aware of the type of light workers there are, but except for I think starseeds are light workers. I'm not sure, but um I'm aware of that, and I believe I am a starseed, but I believe everybody is a starseed basically because we come from the stars. But um yeah, I don't really know the different types of light workers though.
Well, that's perfect. I will just go over the different titles and see if any of this resonates with you. I consider myself a star seed as well. So I connect with that definition of what a star seed is. And if you're not familiar with a star seed, that is something that, as a highly sensitive person, is easy to get into a deep dive. I'm just going to list off the different types, and maybe just listing the categories will help you see what resonates with you. So the first one that I mentioned that I read was healers. So it seems like a very general type. And then there are the light keepers, there are the gatekeepers, there's transmuters, messengers, way showers, and blueprint holders. And again, these are, just the 7 types that someone decided to identify. I'm sure there are multiple types, or maybe there is a combination of types that is not listed here. But when I read this article, what showed up for me was when I read the definition for way shower. And it's basically WAY shower, way showers. is, as the name suggests, these types of light workers are here to show others the way. They are here to be a living example of the change they wish to see. They live their lives so others can watch and learn. They do their best work by focusing on their own inner transformation. And as they live their lives, they become an example for others to follow. A way shower may not even be interested in talking or writing about their experiences as the messengers do. They just focus on being the change they wish to see. They're interested in their own self transformation just to show others how to do it too. So that really resonated with me in terms of being someone that can easily go inward and do the inner work and then example that to others. And so a lot of times throughout my life, because it's easy for me to do a lot of inner growth and a lot of spiritual growth and spend time on myself, my personal development, my spiritual, my health, all of these areas, I will often have people come to me and say, "Oh, you really inspired me to do this," or "Just through your example, I hope I can emulate what you're doing." So that can be then a healing practice in itself for other people without me actively trying to guide people, but really just being an example for others to follow. So that was just one example of the type that is listed here. And I can get into some more. I was kind of thinking of just sprinkling the different definitions throughout the conversation because I was curious to hear what resonated with you or what you consider a light worker, or if you've heard of different types of light workers, what speaks to you in those categories. So, and I'm more than happy to continue reading definitions, but I just kind of wanted to start off the conversation with um, some general conversation or general questions. So, Candace, does that help or support what you shared?
Yes, it does. Um, yeah, it really does. Thank you.
Awesome. And again, I'll get into more of these. I've just read two of the descriptions, but I see Tanya has jumped up and Rachel, thanks for being here. What are your perceived notions of light workers, or how do you identify with the term light worker, or are you familiar with the different types of light workers? And I'm asking that question to Tanya.
Good morning, Julie, and everybody else that is in the room. Um, yeah, so I do identify as a light worker, and that is something that actually kind of I just recently learned, actually through another Clubhouse room here, and through a friend of mine who is like deeply, deeply intuitive, and we had a conversation about it, and I didn't necessarily know that there was, the different types. But when I heard you, Julie, read the healer, I definitely resonated with that. Um, and yeah, it's been reflected to me by others along like my journey, how they're like, your energy just feels really grounded. Your energy feels really safe. Your energy feels really healing. You feel very nurturing. Just all these pieces have been reflected back to me. And so it is interesting to see those pieces for myself because I've had people reflect that back kind of along my journey, but at that time I wasn't able to see it for myself. And so today I definitely can see that and can feel that more so. And what was your other question, Julie?
I think you kind of answered everything, just if you were familiar with the term, if you were aware of the different types, and if you resonated with being a light worker.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wasn't sure if I had answered all of those pieces. And I mean, it is a very interesting topic because I feel like it is something that can be hard to like quote explain to somebody else, like because it is on the woo side, right? So it can be difficult to try and explain that to somebody else. And I think I finally have just arrived at a place with it myself that I don't try to explain it. I just show up as myself, and those who resonate with the energy that I put out, are the ones who are meant to be in my world and on my path. And those who don't are not meant to at this time. So yeah, this is an interesting conversation. So thank you, Julie.
I agree. It is interesting. And I wish I could give you a slideshow with all these definitions because it would probably help stimulate the conversation. But I'm going to do my best to just kind of dip in and read different descriptions. I'm going to read now what a light keeper is. A light keeper are light workers who are able to hold the light no matter what. When it's light, they are light. When it's dark, they are light. When it's beautiful, they are light. When it's not, they are light. When the sun is out, they are the light. And when it's stormy, they still hold the light. They do not diminish their light no matter what's going on around them. These light workers choose to incarnate in different times where light is needed, and their mission is to promote peace and love at all times, even when there is war. And in my mind, when I think of a light keeper, I think of people like Mother Teresa or Gandhi, and again, I know these people aren't superhuman or perfect in their light keeping, I'm sure, but I think of people who are just constantly holding space for peace and light and love. So that is light keepers. And then the gatekeepers, these light workers are here to guard and work on the different energy portals of the planet. For example, the energy vortex in Sedona and many other places. Energy portals are specific places on the planet where the veil between the physical realm and the spiritual realm is very thin, and energy can flow in and out. These are places of heightened spiritual and metaphysical activity. The energy system of Gatekeeper allows energy to come in or go out into the other worlds. A gatekeeper may have a sudden nudge to visit an energy portal, and they may not even understand why. And I think it's hilarious that this description brings up Sedona because I feel very strongly connected to Sedona. I've only visited once, but when I was there, the energy that was there was really intense for me. And it almost just felt like home, or an energy space that was just beyond my comprehension of what I could understand before being in that area. So I love how the author says, these are these intuitive nudges that may seem weird or off to other people, but they make total sense for us. And the more that we can understand the different types of light workers, then the more accepting we can be of ourselves and the mission that we're here to pursue on Earth. So it seems a little woo and out there, but I really like that description. And then another one is transmuters. These are light workers with very powerful energy systems, and they can take any kind of dense energy and transmute it into something good. They are the magicians of the light workers, the alchemists. They are templated to be able to transmute or transform dense energy into light, and they can do it effortlessly. They can go into a room where is chaos and tension, and in a matter of minutes, they can calm the energy in the room. These types of light workers purposefully incarnate into difficult worlds or difficult families just to help the people in that family line or that part of the world work out their issues so they can transform and evolve. So I just read off light keepers, gatekeepers, and transmuters. And I'm just curious if any of these descriptions jog your memory or make you think of a friend or a family member or someone you have in your life that would put them in this category. Because a lot of times I read these descriptions and I'm like, oh, that's my friend so and so. And it really makes sense. So just from that description. I know I read 3 different ones, but is there anything that resonates with you, or you think of someone in your life that would fit into these categories? And I'll just mute myself here and see if anyone would like to chat.
The last one that you read really resonated a lot, and I say that because I've been through a lot of stuff, especially with like family and stuff like that, and I have a lot of trauma that I deal with, but I see why I go through what I go through because I was I chose to be here this lifetime to elevate the.
Did you get cut off, or were you complete, Candace?
I'm sorry, what was the last part you heard?
Oh, you just said you were here to transform. I wasn't sure if you were complete or if you got cut off.
Yeah, I was done saying what I had to say. I came here to transform.
Yes. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, I'll open it up to Rachel or Tanya, or is it Kahindi? I'm probably
Kinda.
not
No,
saying
no.
it.
No, don't worry. It's the silent H. It's kinda. Don't worry, darling. Kinda. And
Thank
since I'm
you.
talking, I think I'll. Shall I go? Shall I go next, or would
If
you?
you have something to reply or discuss, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was listening. I'm in the gym, so just before I get really into it, I thought let me speak, and I'm not really. I am a speaker, but not really on Clubhouse. So yeah, I'm definitely a light worker. I've battled with it, I should say again, for 40 years or more. And people can laugh at that, but I think because of the trauma that I had as a kid, it took me a long time to appreciate anything about myself that felt good or was good. But I definitely identify with a transformer. I've had so much trauma to work out in this life. It's actually taken me a lifetime, and if you knew my story, then I think it might make a bit of sense. But I live happily and gratefully with what I've learned. But definitely, I'm a transformer. I came to a family where actually I spent so much time trying to, I'm actually just trying to be a family with these members of my family that really maybe have been through many lifetimes of not really knowing what family is. So I finally put that down and continue to work on my own stuff. And with my own stuff, I tend to meet a lot of people that need help with that energy. And I also want to add that I meet a lot of people who have very, very like vampiric tendencies, like to suck you dry. I wouldn't actually call myself a highly or anything because, as I said, it took me a long time to struggle, a long struggle to accept those things. But I did have a period with ayahuasca um, in 2019, and I had done several courses over the years on healing energies and stuff like that, similar. But when I did this particular ayahuasca retreat, um, I was told by the mother that I am a sensitive. She didn't say highly, she didn't say deeply, and she also told me how courageous I was and that I was a good girl. She didn't tell me I was very highly. She just used very simple, and I could sit with I'm a sensitive because I am extremely sensitive. Well, I would just stick with sensitive because she didn't say extremely or highly. She just used as I said, so yeah, I'm sensitive. I'm a sensitive person, and I have just come back from 5 weeks in Africa, which is where my parents come from, West Africa, and I had the most amazing, life enhancing, life altering adventure you could ever, including sleeping under the stars in a very intense African night by myself in a very, very rural environment, which was I didn't expect, but it was absolutely awesome. And I'm now kind of feeling more ready than I ever have in my life to step into the lovely energy that walks with me that I have. I'm really honoured to be who I am today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And I think I heard the last thing you said at the end is it's been a self-accepting journey for you. Is that right?
Yeah, it has been. I've done a lot. I've been in and out of therapy. I'm very, very, very not reticent to speak about that, or don't really want to talk about it because I've been in groups here with people that was supposedly sensitive, and talked about how long I was in therapy and was ridiculed um, by the women that I was in the group with. So yeah, I've been in and out, and I really appreciate my journey, and it has been one of so much trauma. But wherever I am, however I am today, I am in a much better place than I ever was when I was fighting myself and didn't believe in who I was.
Exactly. And I just want to note, based on what you said there, the author kind of sums up things by saying, when you know the type of light worker you are, you won't fight your life mission anymore. You will no longer dismiss those intuitive nudges from the universe to follow a certain call because it's what you came here to do. So I just love that you kind of hit a really key point about, why are we even talking about light workers? Why are we talking about the different type of light workers? And I think as highly sensitive people, we tend to go inward. We are on that self-discovery path. We have the capacity to go into that depth of knowing who we are and accepting who we are through understanding. Then it makes us feel better about ourselves and our life mission, and we can then lean into, our purpose and our mission, instead of trying to dismiss it or be like others, or feel we have to follow a certain path that other people decide for us. It can be very comforting, just as much as learning that you're a highly sensitive person or an empath. So I love the idea of this giving us the sense of empowerment, and also to better understand what drives us. And I was going to also offer that question up to the group. Does your awareness of being a light worker or a healer or one of these categories make you feel that you can move forward in a way that is in alignment with your intuition? Or is it seen as a struggle? Just like sometimes when we learn that we're a highly sensitive person, people may be on this journey at different points thinking, well, this is really a burden. It's not something that I consider a gift. But then you go through a lot of exploration and understanding of self, and then you can start to see these sensitive traits as being positive and something that you can even get behind as your contribution to the world, and seeing it as a superpower or a gift. So I would love to hear if you feel like being a light worker is something of a burden, or is it something that you can see the gifts in it and move forward in a path that feels aligned with your gifts instead of working against them?
I will share. This is Rachel, by the way. I love this question so much, Julie. And this whole conversation, as per usual, has been really wonderful. I definitely felt like growing up, I had a hard time, I think, seeing it as a gift. I to be honest, like I went through a journey of feeling really shameful about my sensitivity. It was, I was told by people around me, oh, you're too sensitive, or you're taking it personally, or these different things. And that was hard. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And as I got older and started to do more inner work, I learned that it's just a part of me, and to see it with compassion rather than see it with, hate or anything like that. Um, and I think now, doing what I do as a coach and helping others, like I do see myself in that light of being a light worker. But I think Elaine Aaron talks about this, is it's hard for HSPs to talk about ourselves too. And that was a hard one for me, was talking about myself or seeing myself in that light. But once I started to, um, I feel like it is a gift, because when I'm able to help clients or be in session with them, I think it's really beautiful to be able to actually physically feel in my body their shifts that they're making. Um, and it's like, while it's kind of a hard one to explain, but it's like, while I have boundaries there, I still get to experience that with them. And I feel that that's really beautiful, and not everyone gets to experience it on such a deep level or hold that deep space. Cause I personally believe that HSPs and empaths, that we can hold a deeper space for people just because we are more comfortable at those deeper depths, and we just kind of were created to be able to go there a little bit more easily. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, but yeah, all in all, I do definitely think that I think it's a gift, and I think it's something really beautiful, and something to be definitely grateful for. But I can also understand firsthand like the difficulty of seeing it from that light. And I love like the quotes that you shared, um Julie. I think those are really helpful, and I think, yeah, I think learning you're an HSP can be really empowering. And I think finally fully stepping into that role as being, okay, I am a light worker. I was, created this way, and there was an intention by whatever higher power anyone believes in to live life in this way. I really do think, I know you read something about we like choose, because I believe in soul contracts, and that we kind of choose to like have certain aura colors or be an HSP or have these different ways about us to help people heal. And it's interesting personally reflecting on my life, of just different things I've experienced, especially at a young age, and seeing it now from a different perspective of like being an HSP, being an empath, being a light worker, and how, I don't know. I mean, even when I was a freshman in high school, my friends' parents would say, you should be a therapist. Like you have good advice and you have good insight." Or I remember being 7 years old in my great grandmother's hospital room, and I was talking to some adult that was like, had, family member of the person next to them. And I was 7, and I still remember that person saying, "You're an old soul, kid." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And it was just, it's interesting because as a kid and growing up, you just don't think of yourself that way. You're just like, "Oh, whatever." And then I just feel like now I'm able to look at it from a different perspective. So, anyways, that was kind of a tangent, but yeah, I think it's such a gift, but I also think there can be space to hold both, feeling it's a gift, and then also having moments where you're like, wow, this can be really tough, because I think it all gets to exist. So, anyways, okay. That's all for that. This is Rachel, and I'm complete.
Thank you, Rachel. And I think everything you shared was really helpful. And I was just curious, is there a particular type or multiple types that resonate with you, or are you familiar with the different types?
Good question. I wasn't really familiar with the different types. I've had experiences with like some psychics I'm close with, and they've told me certain things that I think would resonate with like certain types, but I guess I just kind of look at it as something more broad, personally. But I'm sure I do. The transmuter, I believe that's what it was called. Um, that one definitely resonates. I know I have a lot of times become what people needed, and it wasn't always necessarily helpful to me always. It was just something I sort of did. Like I was always, um my friend that's a psychic told me, like, even when I was, 3 and 4 years old, I was already taking inventory of the people's feelings around me and trying to make them happier and all that stuff. And I think that can kind of start to go into the realm of like people pleasing and all of that, certainly. But yeah, I think the transmuter one, and I can't remember the names of the others. There was multiple, but yeah, I think personally I've just looked at it as something kind of broad. And I guess my sort of belief is like we all have a little bit of each inside of us, but I think some people kind of lean into certain ones more, perhaps. So I hope that that answers the question. That might have been a confusing answer, but I guess to me it's just like more of, yeah, just a broad thing, I guess.
Well, and
I
that's
don't
and
know if that
that's
answers
why
your
I'm
question.
bringing up this conversation, because for me personally, I always saw it as a broad thing too. And even when I knew in my core that I was an empath, I didn't really know the nitty gritty about empaths. I didn't know there were different types of empaths and all the clairs and all that stuff. And so it's just really interesting to kind of take the trait of being highly sensitive, which makes us more sensitive to our environment, which is energy, and other realms and dimensions and souls and spirits are energy. And so it makes sense, to understand empaths and light workers and how they kind of show up in these different categories that we may have at one time of our journey, or we might be using a combination of these different types. So it's just really fascinating to me. And you were talking about the transmuters. I also wanted to describe the messengers. And the messengers, it says, these light workers specialize in retrieving messages from the spirit world. They are good at tuning into the spiritual messages from the other side and then translating those messages into words for everyone to understand. They act as the bridge between the spirit world and the physical world, and they are mostly spiritual teachers, speakers, and writers. They have a very active third eye, crown, and heart chakras, and they do different things to bring spiritual messages into physical form. Usually messengers are words to bring their messages, but it isn't always so. Sometimes they can bring messages through photography, paintings, and other types of artistic expressions. And then I'll read the last one that I haven't read, which is the blueprint holder. These light workers come to the planet with specific blueprints installed in them like computers, and they come to change the programming of the planet. There are many different types of blueprint holders, but a good example is a twin flame. A twin flame has the mission of holding a sacred partnership, a partnership that is meant to change another person. Their presence in another person's life can cause so much change and transformation in the life of that person, and that's a common type of blueprint. They come to Earth just to help others transform their lives. And then there's a little asterisk with one more description calling them witnesses. These are a small group of light workers who are sent to various parts of the world or into certain families just to be an observer of the people in that family or that part of the world. They aren't there to do anything. They're just there to be witnesses to the things that happen there. They have the role of visiting places that have experienced great pain or disconnection for the purpose of witnessing. For example, the abuse, strife, sins, etc. They watch how members of the family live their lives, what they do wrong, and the things that they do right. They are kind of like the mystery shopper. The person you don't know is keeping tabs on you and going to report all for the evolution of the souls involved. So I've read all of the different descriptions, and I'm happy to reread any of them if you needed to hear that again. But again, this is all something that kind of came new to me. I hadn't realized there were different types of light workers. And I also didn't necessarily think of a light worker different than an empath or different than a highly sensitive person. But now I can really see that there are three different categories. And then as you do that exploration as a highly sensitive person, whether you're looking at your Enneagram or your human design or your astrology sun sign. I mean, these are just tools that help us get a better understanding of ourselves so that we can be more self-accepting and be at peace with who we are and really lean into the things that we're best suited for instead of trying to um, respond so much to what others outside of ourselves think we should or shouldn't be doing. So I just thought that these different descriptions were really helpful in kind of seeing, you know, these aspects of ourselves and how we're in agreement with them, or maybe we're not quite aligned with them. So just hearing those different types. Does anyone else have anything that you would like to share, or is there a person that sticks out in your mind as a certain type of light worker that you have familiarity with? Because I can immediately think of different people that I know in my life that I've gone to for healing work, energy work, and I can definitely see them fitting into these different categories. I just didn't know there were so many different types. So it's just something I'm very curious about.
Julie, I have a question. What was the last type that you read?
This one is called The Witnesses, the one where they
Mm.
witness really than doing any action. It called it the mystery shopper. Is that the one you're referring to?
I think so. Was it the one that was mentioning like that they can kind of create transformation in other people's lives just by being in their
No,
lives?
that was the blueprint
No.
holder. So the blueprint
Mm,
holder is they come to Earth just to help others transform their lives. That was the
mm,
last sentence in that
mm,
description.
mm. Yeah, I feel like that's my partner. um yeah, that was interesting just listening to that because he is extremely gifted in so many ways, and it comes so naturally to him that I don't even think he recognizes it, right? And it's like I'm constantly pointing those pieces out to him as a reflection back to him, like, because he doesn't see it, which is common because he's a 6'2", and the second line is his unconscious in his human design chart. So a lot of the times the two lines don't see their innate natural gifts. And so that was just really fascinating. Um, to like hear that description. So thank you for sharing those pieces.
Yeah, and that's what I think is pretty exciting is to start identifying those people that you know have healing energy, but like what is their mission here on earth? Because a lot of times, sure, we can connect to different people and we can see, and observe the type of person they are, the type of healer they are. But then when you can start to identify that these different categories have different missions on earth, that is just fascinating to me, and I can connect with a lot of these. I don't feel like I'm just one, but I can, there's different fragments of each of these that I feel either have been a part of my journey or are developing as part of my journey, just the deeper awareness that I bring to it. So I love I think it's also helpful in our relationships with people to kind of like identify as highly sensitive people those traits that we're attracted to, in the form of, is it for our own healing or is it because we feel similar to that person? Are we maybe attracted to that person because they're not intentionally trying to heal us, but because being around their energy is something that we're attracted to for our own benefit, for our own healing experience. So I think too, just having these different types laid out helps us see, is it for our benefit or are we benefiting the person that is in our experience? So I think that's really interesting as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I feel like it's a mutual, it mutually benefits both people. At least that's been my personal experience with that. Like I constantly say, and I have a greater understanding today of, how you hear like the expression love heals. And that has very much been like my experience in my relationship. He's not necessarily doing anything that he considers special. He's just like, I'm just being myself and I'm just loving you. But the way that he loves me and the way his energy and like all these different pieces, like it's been a very growth producing, very challenging for me personally, um, because I've never been received for fully who I am and loved in that fashion. And so it's like his love has shined light on all of my crap basically that was no longer serving me. And that has shown me myself of like, look, these things don't serve you. And so literally him just loving me is doing that and helping me to heal. And so it's like everybody has those unique, beautiful qualities in the ways that they show up to love others in that unique way, however that is for them, and has the power to heal those individuals on whatever level that is. And that is for me how, like, I guess I view and see, light workers, regardless of the description, just infusing love into others, into those dark crevices that maybe we may not necessarily want to look at, but that do provide the healing that we need.
Yes, I love that. And I think it's also something that you brought up where your partner isn't necessarily conscious of his ability or isn't, it's not in his face to totally understand that, but you're a witness and observing it for him. So you, in that sense, are helping him get a deeper sense of his talents and gifts with being a light worker. that help him understand and receive his abilities on a different level. So it is reciprocated in that way. And I love that too, because um, even just talking about personality traits, you know, Myers-Briggs or being a highly sensitive person, we're all different. Even though we have that label, our personality is shaped by so many different aspects. And I think a lot of times as sensitive people, we might be thinking, well, this is obvious to me. How come this other person can't see things from my perspective? And I think a more healing approach is we all have a limited amount of experiences, and everyone has different experiences that shape their perception of the world. And just because it's obvious to us or natural or more intuitive to us doesn't mean other people can see or understand from that perspective. And I think that's where, you know, as someone who wants to bring in that transformation and growth in all of my relationships, I realize not everyone is wired to receive growth or to constantly step into growth. And so I think understanding, you know, is it my role to fix and transform everyone's trauma or support them in a way that will help their growth? Or is it just for me to observe and bring some awareness to that person that can just plant the seed and help them start to understand who they are through our mirroring, through our reflection? So I think that's all very valid as a light worker.
Yes, absolutely, Julie. I totally agree. That has also been my experience and my connection with my partner, because he has these gifts and he can see, like, basically the misalignments within a person. Like, he can see down to somebody's soul and like all of the fears and those pieces and the mechanisms that are holding them back from being like their most authentic self. And you know, I have gotten to where I had to express early on, like, I understand you have this gift, but I'm going to set a boundary here, and I'm not ready on my journey right now to be able to see that. And so, what I'm going to request of you is to keep that as something that, like, okay, you're meant to see that, and then ask me if I'm open to hearing, you know, because, you know, that is something that I may not be able to hear. Sure, you can share it, but am I going to actually receive that in that moment if I'm deep in my pain or deep in my fear? Probably not, you know? So I agree with that piece. I just felt called to share that. Thank you, Julie.
I wanted to share something that came up a little bit ago that I meant to share earlier, but Julie, when you were sharing the other descriptions, something that came across was, and this might just be me, but I have a feeling this could be for other people as well. Or this could align also with their experiences. I feel like as time's gone on and I've healed different layers of myself, I almost feel like different pieces of being a light worker have kind of been unlocked, if that makes sense. Because I think before I tried to stuff down, you know, ignore my intuition, right? Like there was a lot of times, especially because of what I was told around me about my sensitivity and this and that. I think, and I think just in society in general, we're kind of taught to stray away from that. You know, it's like work harder, work longer hours, work a job you don't like just for the resume, like all these little things in society that really, I think, you know, discourage our connection to self. And I've done a lot of work personally to get back to really listening and really tuning into my body and noticing those body cues and what I need and what makes me happy. And I think there's been a lot of things in my life that don't, you know, quote unquote, make sense. But I just felt in my heart that's what I was supposed to do. And I think I didn't really even think about, oh, maybe this is like being a way show or whatever. I just did it for me. But I do think through those experiences, I have been led to specific people who have helped me or who have been maybe a transmuter or like different types of light worker in my life because I did follow my intuition. And I think by me following my intuition maybe helped other people. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of feel like there's this unlocking thing that happened, at least for me. Because now I feel very, very in tune to my intuition and do intuitive readings. And I think I needed certain people in my life. Like I had a mentor who, again, she's psychic, and she was getting a ton of messages that I needed to do that I was supposed to be doing these intuitive readings for people, and I was kind of like, who, me? Like that's kind of how I felt about it. um and I felt like I kind of needed someone to be like, no, let's practice really trusting yourself. And I think the ego can really get in the way, but I think as we sort of start to learn how to quiet that ego voice, learn how to differentiate what's our ego speaking, and what, and or fear, and what really is our intuition. And once we can do that, I think that's what allows us to sort of start to unlock these levels of us that were always within, but that just needed space and safety to come out. I hope that makes sense. That was kind of very woo, but
Candace, did you want to share something? We're not able to hear you if you're speaking. Okay, I was just going to respond to you, Rachel. I really, oh, can you, okay, I'm going to keep talking here and I'll give you a chance to join in just a second, Candace. I really love how you brought up just those layers. I think so I'm 46 years old. I'll be 47 this year. And I think with the journey of life being, a couple decades or a few decades into this life cycle, there have been different layers of my personal growth that have brought me to different levels of understanding myself. And so I think as sensitive people, the longer our lives are in play, the deeper our experiences, which gives us this wisdom of really accumulating everything that we've known and experienced, and then bringing that into conversations. And then you add being a highly sensitive person on top of that, which means we're deeply processing information. We're able to collect a lot of data points that show different observations and patterns in other people. And it's bringing that consciousness, that ability to see things for what they are versus getting wrapped up in a story or like you mentioned, trauma. And I think that is sometimes the catalyst of our healing experience. And I feel that light workers are really meant to experience, not that we call in trauma or we want bad things to happen to us, but I believe in soul contracts as well, that we actually come to earth and that experience is decided before we come here, and we put certain things in play, whether that's the parents we choose or the place that we decide to be born or the region or what time period you're coming into the world. But I think that we're deciding that so that our soul can experience growth, and that we as soul beings, I really feel, are energetically transmuted when we pass. We are here eternally, and from that sphere of this eternal being, we are here to have a human experience so that we can create even more depth from a soul level. So I think that trauma is a huge catalyst, but I also believe that we're not necessarily the victims of it, but we're here as light workers to take that trauma and really turn it into something that is a resource of value to humankind and to human beings that are struggling and maybe are have not come to earth as many times as a light worker, let's say. We're able to bring gifts and talents and understanding and consciousness to people who are, um, you know, like you said, Rachel, some people consider themselves old souls. I consider myself an old soul. But other people may be younger souls, if you will, and need a little more support in that growth area. So I think that's all really interesting too, how trauma connects. And also, you mentioned intuition. And I just wanted to share a little story. When I lived in New York City, I worked for a life coach as a nanny, and this was in my late 20s. And she was a part of Landmark Education, which used to formerly be called EST, which I'm not as familiar with the old, before it was Landmark Education. But basically, it's a personal development program. And she suggested that I try that out. And I remember specifically going through one of the intensive weekends. It's kind of like a Tony Robbins weekend, but it's on a different level of just really understanding who we are and our patterns and our habits and our ways of thinking that maybe stop us from truly living a fruitful life or an authentic life. And I just remember from that experience, this was like 20 years ago, that they said to me that your intuition is not a reliable source. And I was like, what? That really didn't resonate with me because I felt really connected to my intuition. But then in that moment, it made me feel like I shouldn't be trusting it. And then I come to learn at age 43 that I'm a highly sensitive person. And intuition is something that I think is a tool for us, that is a superpower, that we have the ability to see into things that others are not seeing. And so for me, I see intuition as one of the guiding pillars for how I look at the world. But I often question, is my intuition coming from a place of trauma, or is my intuition coming from a place of knowing and being connected to source? And so I often have studied my trauma and understood that there are parts that are, pulling me in certain directions that maybe feel like intuition, but truly they might be a stuck cycle that I'm not as conscientious of or conscious of. And so I'm just curious too, if intuition for you as a light worker, as a highly sensitive person, as an empath, is that something that you question in yourself? Do you question, is this coming from a wounded place, or is this intuition really connected to my greater source?
Ooh, this is such a good question. This is Rachel, by the way. I was like, dang, this is really good. Um, I think that I think is work to be done around learning to differentiate, what's your intuition versus what is fear or trauma or all those things. And I think like um Julie knows I'm like very into the subconscious mind and all of that stuff as a hypnotherapist and everything. But I think our subconscious mind dictates our reality that, yeah, definitely has to do with some trauma and all of that. But I think intuition is, excuse me, it's that instinctive, like first feeling. Like I've heard it explained as, your that first thought or that first feeling is your intuition. And then the second, if you start to question or whatever, that's fear, or that is then your conditioning or your trauma saying, oh, well, now, no, this isn't safe, and it can be hard because sometimes it can come really quickly one after another. But I think that's why I think those practices of like sitting, meditating, connecting with spirit and noticing what that feels like, to me at least, it feels like a very different feeling. And it me personally, it feels like this really intense push or pull towards something, to reach out to someone, to do something, to say something. And it just feels different. um I kind of started losing my train of thought. There was something else I was going to add. Um, but that's a really good question though, because I think it can be difficult at times, especially again with like conditioning even of society, to be really in touch with that and to know, okay, this is my intuition speaking. But I think as light workers, we are co-creating with spirit. At least that's what I believe personally. Spirit, God, the universe, like whatever you personally resonate with. I think there's a higher power that we co-create with. And I think it does guide us. And so I think even at times, like whether it's trauma or not, I feel like because soul contracts, we chose these situations, even if trauma comes up in that, I think it's still leading us where we need to go. So I think maybe sometimes it's even less in like thinking like, is this trauma, is this intuition, and just trusting like I'm being whatever it is, I'm led here for a reason kind of thing, or I'm being led to this thing, and like I'm just gonna like try to trust and see what happens. So that's just kind of my initial thought. This is Rachel, and I'm complete.
I love that. And I totally agree with that. And I think I had heard in an empath room a long time ago that intuition is the first thing that comes to your awareness, and it's very quick and gentle. And the ego mind is where you start to hear like judgment or harshness or critical um nudges, versus the intuition is that like yearning, or it's kind of like a feeling that will, if you ignore it, it will keep coming, versus trauma might be like you said, regardless of it being trauma or intuition. I do trust that those nudges that come to us is leading us down a path, even if it's perpetuated by trauma. Maybe that is the path we need to go down to heal the trauma. So it's not necessarily, um, you know, choosing to think about your intuition as trauma or intuition. And if the intuition is taking you down a positive route and the trauma is maybe making you feel stuck, I think there can be growth from, feeling those nudges and following that path. But in my mind, I feel like intuition always feels gentle, and it comes to you right away, and then the ego mind is trying to, but what about this, or that's not going to work, or you start to get into that ego mind of control, and it starts to rip apart that intuitive nudge. Is kind of been my experience. And I don't know if that's kind of what you were saying, Rachel, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally. I fully agree with that. And I think what you added was so good because sorry, I took a bite of food. um, yeah, no, I think it really is like our intuition is that first thing. And what you mentioned too of it continues to kind of like I think of it as almost like shoulder tapping. Like it feels like if you're not listening, it'll continue to shoulder tap until basically you do that thing. So that resonated as well. I've noticed that it just and that's what I meant with it being very it's like it feels like a very strong push. Like it's something more to me it just feel I don't know how to even describe it, but it just feels like it really like pulls me in that direction. And it's not super harsh, it's just more like intense, if that makes sense. I don't know if that yeah, anyway. I'm Rachel, I'm complete.
I think also the energy of intuition feels like something that can light you up, instead of it being something that makes you feel bad about yourself. I don't think intuition would ever um, take you down a path of making you feel bad over and over again. It might take you through a level of growth that is uncomfortable, but I don't think it will be a reoccurring thought or a tape that plays in your head over and over again that's essentially crushing you or making you feel bad about yourself. I think that's another way to think about just the energy behind intuition. And I see Chris has popped up here. Chris, did you have something to add?
I would love to, and I'm loving this conversation. Okay, intuition and the ego is what I was thinking about, and suffering as well with trauma. Trauma um, is inherently will diminish the ego because the ego cannot exist when in that state, right? So I also feel like a highly sensitive people. I feel energy and others, and along my path, I've noticed that my trauma as a youth. Is what's allowed me to be open to others and in the ego and intuition. The ego will want to take control, correct? But the intuition is your inner self, the intuition of the light and the spirit that we know when we're meditating or we're grounded. And that is the driving force that I feel is propelling me towards my path. Um, but the recognition between the two can somewhat be muddy because the ego wants what it wants, and it will try to be cunning and baffling in its pursuit of its intentions. But um, understanding what you want to manifest and letting go of the outcome, and being still quiet. And I just read this thing. I just want to pop this kind of off the subject, but listen and silent have the same letters, and the middle three letters of heart is the ear. So listen and be silent, and that's, I feel like, the what the true self is, the message it is. With that, I yield back. Julie, Rachel, you guys are awesome.
Thank you so much, Chris. I love that wordplay you shared. That's really interesting. I feel like I've heard that before, but the timing of this is really nice. And I totally agree with you as far as intuition. When you do allow for that quiet time and settling into that inner world, it's like intuition just bursts to you. It just comes to you. It's not something that you're like, let me clear all these thoughts out so I can find my intuition. Intuition is always something I feel that is inside of us. It's being quiet that allows it to come up instead of something that we need to pull back the layers to find or be active in the pursuit of. It's really that quiet stillness that allows us to hear something that comes from deeper inside of us. And that's a huge gift of one, being a highly sensitive person that does require more alone time, and then leaning into our biology, taking that alone time, that quiet time, to then lean into the superpowers of being a highly sensitive person, which is getting that guidance, getting that inner knowing and that intuition that then leads us down a path that if we weren't quiet or still long enough, we wouldn't have heard. So I think that's another huge key to this journey and this path as a light worker, is to just really give ourselves as much downtime, alone time, stillness, nature time, time to be a part of these patterns and cycles that shift and change, instead of feeling the need to control the things in our life to make ourselves happy. I think there is a beauty in the gift of surrendering and really, just like the trees go through seasons, they don't uproot themselves and go south for the winter. They are who they are. They are a part of nature and a cycle that is accepting of the changes that come and go with the change through their groundedness. So I think trees are just a beautiful example of listening to those inner nudges and going with the cycles and the seasons of stillness and surrendering and acceptance of something that is maybe in control, that's bigger than our human brain can comprehend. So I love what you shared, and thanks for coming up and sharing that, Chris. Thank you.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up the cycles. Yes, the cycles. And the rising sun and the setting sun as well. Um, the cycles that, um, to let go of the control, that the ego wants to control. And I think that's what you're speaking to, and your feedback and your reflection. And I definitely resonate with that. Is the more awareness we have with the synchronicities of our intentions, um, the more likely our illusionary outcome that we want to manifest will come into our life. But it comes in part that comes in, in different forms. It may not come to my life in different levels, but not how I initially visioned. Um, but being present in the now, being present and grounded is 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 the first part of that of my um, uh, focus, I guess. Because energy goes where attention goes. So that energy that we share, um, sometimes we're not cognitively aware of that, but they're the programs that we see and the programming are question, critical thinking, and being aware of self. With that, love you guys.
Thank you, Chris. I love the energy you bring into the room. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. I'll go ahead and mute myself if anyone else would like to reflect or discuss or ask a question. And I'll just ask this question. I know not everyone was here for the description of each of the different 7 different types of light workers. I did put the link up here on the top. So hopefully that link will work for people who do not have a Medium subscription. But even if you do a quick Google online, you can see that there are different types of light workers. And I just think that this is an interesting topic. It's kind of a deep dive within a category within a category. It's like being a highly sensitive person is one aspect of who we are, and then diving a little deeper to see how our sensitivities are showing up in different areas of our life and how that shapes our purpose and mission here on earth. And I say that lightly in the sense that, you know, we don't need to label ourselves to give us permission to go about our lives, but sometimes it's helpful to have language around that woo, that deep awareness that we have within ourselves that feels good and right, and it brings light into our life, but we don't necessarily have the language to articulate what that experience is for us to other people, and that can often leave us feeling misunderstood or isolated or different than other people. And so having these different types illustrated, I think, is just another tool that helps us feel better about being different and feel better about giving ourselves permission to slow down and to build a relationship with our intuition and trust ourselves on a deeper level than maybe we were when we didn't accept that we were a highly sensitive person and we had to fit the mold of so many other external influences. And so again, just bringing ourselves back to this awareness and giving us permission to slow down and bring in more consciousness, mindfulness, getting our rhythms aligned with nature. All of those gifts are something that I feel highly sensitive people have more access to than non highly sensitive people. And then we're able to go down that journey and show others what that journey looks like, even if they're not ready to grow and expand, or they're at the just the beginning of their spiritual journey. So I think it's important to talk about this, even if it sounds woo or if people won't quite get it. I really truly believe in just planting a seed. And sometimes that seed, you know, you hear it over and over again, and then you finally start to say, oh, maybe I should slow down. Maybe I should allow for more quietness. Maybe I should allow for my life to imitate nature. and go with the seasons and go with the flow of that change instead of resisting it so much. So, if it gives you peace and if it helps you strengthen your relationship with your sensitive self, I consider it helpful. So that's why I wanted to really talk about this topic and offer that to other people who have never heard of light workers having different types. So if this was helpful for you, I'd love to hear maybe what resonated with you, or if there's anything else that you would like to share before we close up the room. But I really appreciate everyone's presence in this conversation and your openness to talk about this kind of thing, because it does feel a bit woo to people. But I just really appreciate people who are willing to learn and grow and listen to new ideas and be curious, and see what resonates with them. And I always say, whatever resonates with you, great. If it doesn't resonate with you, great. Whatever works, leave the stuff that doesn't work behind. But I think, you can really be the deciding factor in like your level of growth with being a light worker.
Yes, I don't want to take up the whole room, but I do have something to share with um, with your share.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. First of all, thank you for bringing up the seed, planting the seed, um, planting the seed on fertile soil, right? But it takes water that we're primarily a source of the connections with others, right? What we do impacts others. Also enlightenment, and if you break it down, I'm an engineering major by trade, but in light is also the light in the cycle. If you break it down into the heartbeat that we felt in and when we're in vitro, that connects us, and we're all on this path, and really we're bouncing off each other, spinning on this big old rock in this space. And space is vast and it's a vacuum. And but w- understanding that feeling of connectedness is, I feel like, is missing. With, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna speak first person. I'll say I haven't felt. I feel like everyone wants to be individual and stuff, and so I tend to go into solitude and with nature and the cycle, and that's my how I fill my cup. And when my cup isn't full, then I retreat. Um, but just that recognition and the witness, being able to zoom out, I feel like is part of how I'm viewing from my core beliefs, because I feel like that lens is the programming, right? So it's what it's been modeled to us, and just understanding that I do have a lens is important as well. Anyway, you're wanting to close out the room, but I really, I'm glad I popped in to this room. Thank you, Julie, Rachel, everyone in here.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I'm not in a rush to close it out. I'm happy to hear your thoughts. And I can definitely relate to, when we feel like our cup isn't full, is to to go inward, to retreat from the world. And I think that's a healthy response. I think if you're able to pull away and learn something about yourself or learn about a situation that you're pulling away from, that it's helpful for you to take that time, and be alone. And I was also thinking when you shared, I'm not sure if you're familiar with human design, but the reason why I kind of fell into this different types of light workers and why it resonated with me is that I recently learned, Tanya had brought it up, when she was in here, the 6-2 profile, which is a human design thing. And the 6-2 profile, which is part of my blueprint, is it's role model slash hermit. And a role model is more of the conscious aspect of ourself that we understand, and the hermit is the subconscious or the less conscious of the two. And that made perfect sense to me because through the pandemic, I really loved being home. I felt more comfortable at home. I liked being able to stay at home and be that hermit. And it took me quite some time on the other side of 2020 to kind of put myself back out in the world and connect with the world again. But when I learned my human design, that I'm actually meant to spend time in that inner world, and that wisdom that I cultivate within myself is actually helpful for others as I role model what has worked in my experience and what has not. And so it gave me more permission to take those times of retreat more seriously, in the sense that I'm not retreating in a sense of defense mechanism or isolating myself because I can't handle the world, or I'm making some story up about what I lack. But to know that the hermit allows me to do that inner work, that allows me to show up in the world differently. And other people see that growth, whether it's physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. And then that is also healing other people in my life. So I'm wondering if that hermit, or if you're familiar with human design at all, or you human design type.
I haven't heard this described exactly how, but I definitely resonate with that because my practice of Buddhism, um, it's I there's a lot of similarities to that. The Dalai Lama said to one of his monks that he was taking a nap, and it's like, how can you be taking a nap when there's so much need in the world? But he says, this monk, no, you don't understand. I can't help the world if I don't take my nap. And that, to me, it has been a reoccurring of a question that I ask myself. It's like, what does my cup look like today? And what is the impact that I want to see in the world? And who who is this energetic being? And what energy do I have to share? And I think it's asking the questions, those questions you ask of self, that lead us to answers that come in very silent, like we were saying before. Um, Very silent, still, and just being aware, the awareness of how those things are impactful to others. I know I was looking externally for a long period of time um, for internal and like self, and being like, how who am I? Am I good enough? And it was very confusing to me for a long time. But it's these rooms and talking to these conversations that I feel like I'm not alone, and it's not permanent. And I I just feel like it's overall, if the awareness. I keep going back to that, but it's the awareness is that's key.
And I agree. It's bringing that awareness. And when you brought up the Buddhist philosophy, I really love that, because I think HSPs have this inclination to, we're deeply processing information. We're super aware of our surroundings, and we just want to help things better along. We want to create the environment better, the people in it energetically, we want to lift them up. And ultimately, if we're not taking those steps in our own journey, we're not going to be of any use or support to people in our environment or other people in our lives. So that's a beautiful way to kind of end this room, is really taking that Buddhist philosophy of, I need to take a nap so that I can show up better in the world. And it's not my job to be consciously serving each and everything that needs to be evolving or growing. It's just my part to show up, be an example, and take that hermit time for my own spiritual growth so that I can show up in the world as a person that is grounded and is present in who they are, instead of being reacting or triggered by different things in the world, because we're so sensitive. So I thought that you just brought up so many great points about being the hermit. I wouldn't doubt that you probably have that in your human design. And if you're interested in human design, just send me a message. I'll send you a link to how you can find your chart. And it's just such a mind opening blueprint for, living in your power and going with your authentic energy flow instead of making yourself feel bad. And like you said, Chris, these kind of conversations that we have in Clubhouse really help us along our journey to more self acceptance, and just to know that we're not the only ones having this experience, and finding people that are really relatable along the journey. So just thank you so much for being here and being present to the conversation.
And thank you as well, Julie.
Well, with that being said, I will go ahead and close out the room. I want to say that this has been an interesting year on Clubhouse. And on Thursday, we will be celebrating the first year of being on Clubhouse. I started doing rooms every single Thursday called Highly Sensitive People Unite. And it's just grown and evolved. And one of the things that I'm really proud of and really excited to see continue and grow is this HSP community, being around with other highly sensitive people, to not just talk about our trait and how we can relate to one another, but also tuning into those conversations that are relevant and important to highly sensitive people, so that we don't just focus on who we are in the dimension of a highly sensitive person, but how we relate to the world, how we connect with the world, how we respond to the world, and then looking at those issues as a collective. I like to call them a deep dive, so that we can get into these conversations in a deep, intimate way that maybe other people in our life don't have the capacity to do so. So that's what I really love about being around highly sensitive people, is their ability to get intimate and deep really fast. So thanks again for being a part of this conversation. I do have replays on, so this will be available as a replay. So if you want to go back to those different types of light workers, you can always go back. Or if the link works for you on the top, you can always check that out as well. And what was I going to say? Oh, and I was going to say I'm in the process of getting the replays uploaded to YouTube so that we can reach more people. So I'm really excited about that. So thanks again for being here, everyone. And until next time, I hope you all have a beautiful day and do what fills your heart. Talk to you soon.
Deep power gratitude.